Ananda, there are 7 stations of consciousness and 2 realms. Which are the 7? There are beings different in body and different in perception, such as human beings, some devas and some in states of woe. That is the first station of consciousness. There are beings different in body and alike in perception, such as the devas of Brahma's retinue, born there on account of having attained the first jhana. That is the second station. There are beings alike in body and different in perception, such as the Abhasara devas. That is the third station. There are beings alike in body and alike in perception, such as the Subhakina devas. That is the fourth station. There are beings who have completely transcended all perception of matter by the vanishing of the perception of sense reactions and by non-attention to the perception of variety, thinking space is infinite. They have attained to the sphere of infinite space. That is the fifth station. There are beings who, by transcending the sphere of infinite space, thinking consciousness is infinite, have attained to the sphere of infinite consciousness. That is the sixth station. There are beings who, having transcended the sphere of infinite consciousness, thinking there is no thing, have attained the sphere of no-thingness. That is the seventh station. The 2 realms are the realm of unconscious beings, and secondly, the realm of neither perception nor non-perception. Now, Ananda, as regards this first station of consciousness, with difference of body and difference of perception, as in the case of human beings and so on, if anyone were to understand it, its origin, its cessation, its attraction and its peril, and the deliverance from it, would it be fitting for him to take pleasure in it? No, Lord. And as regards the other stations and the 2 spheres likewise, no, Lord. Ananda, insofar as among having known as they really are, these 7 stations of consciousness and these 2 spheres, their origin and cessation, their attraction and peril, is freed without attachment, that monk, Ananda, is called one who is liberated by wisdom. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha talking about 7 stations of consciousness. First one is different in body and different in perception. Second is different in body and alike in perception. Third is alike in body and different in perception. The fourth is alike in body and alike in perception. The fifth is attained to the sphere of infinite space. The sixth is attained to the sphere of infinite consciousness. 7 is attained to the sphere of no-thingness. And then the 2 realms are realm of unconscious beings and neither perception nor non-perception. There are, Ananda, these 8 liberations. What are they? Possessing form, one sees forms. That is the first liberation. Not perceiving material forms in oneself. One sees them outside. This is the second liberation. 3. Thinking it is beautiful. One becomes intent on it. That is the third. 4. By completely transcending all perceptions of matter, by the vanishing of the perception of sense reactions and by non-attention to the perception of variety, thinking space is infinite, one enters and abides in the sphere of infinite space. That is the fourth. 5. By transcending the sphere of infinite space, thinking consciousness is infinite, one enters and abides in the sphere of infinite consciousness. That is the fifth. 6. By transcending the sphere of infinite consciousness, thinking there is no thing, one enters and abides in the sphere of no-thingness. That is the sixth. By transcending the 7. By transcending the sphere of no-thingness, one reaches and abides in the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. That is the 7th. 8. By transcending the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, one enters and abides in the cessation of perception and feeling. That is the 8th liberation. Ananda, when once among attains these 8 liberations in forward order, in reverse order, and in forward and reverse order, entering them and emerging from them, as and when and for as long as he wishes, and has gained by his own super knowledge here and now, both the destruction of the asavas and the uncorrupted liberation by mind and liberation by wisdom, that monk is called both ways liberated. And Ananda, there is no other way of both ways liberation that is more excellent or perfect than this. Thus the Lord spoke, and the Venerable Ananda rejoiced and was delighted by his words. So these 8 liberations refers to these 8 things. one, seeing forms. Number two, sees forms outside. The third one is meditation on the beautiful, like a beautiful color. And then the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh refers to the arupas or arupa jhanas. And the eighth refers to cessation of perception and feeling. So sometimes there are some arahants, they have not attained the 8 liberations. And the later books, they say that those arahants are wisdom liberated, and that they, if they have not attained the 8 liberations, it means they have not attained any jhana. But that is not true, because here there's no mention of the 4 rupa jhanas, the 4 form jhanas. So it only mentions the 4 formless jhanas and cessation. And the first 3 refers to seeing forms. And this might be referring to seeing forms inside. Then the second one refers to seeing forms outside. And the third one is meditation on the beautiful object, like a beautiful color. So there's nothing here about the rupa jhanas. There are some monks who attain the 4 rupa jhanas and become liberated. But they have no psychic power. So because they have no psychic powers, they don't have the first liberation. They don't see forms inside. They don't have the second, see forms outside. And they don't meditate on a beautiful color or something like that, because they might be meditating on their breath. And also all the others, they don't have the 4 arupas or arupa jhanas, and they also don't have cessation of perception and feeling. And yet, because they have the 4 jhanas, they can become an arahant. So it is a misconception to think if a person has not attained the 8 liberations, that he does not have the 4 rupa jhanas. So now I want to come back to the explanation of the links of dependent origination. Actually, the links of dependent origination in other suttas, especially the Nidana Sangyutta of the Sangyutta Nikaya, there are many suttas there concerning dependent origination. And later books like the Abhidhamma and the commentaries, they talk about dependent origination of suffering in terms of 3 lifetimes. And I think that is wrong, because when they talk about 3 lifetimes, they talk about the first 2, namely ignorance, which conditions sankhara. They say that because of ignorance in the past life, in your past life, sankhara, they say, is creating karma. So because of creating karma, and then the third link is consciousness. So in this life, you are born, they say. And then once you are born, then you have mentality, materiality, then you have 6 sense bases, and then you have contact at the 6 sense bases, then you have feelings, and then you have feelings condition craving, and craving conditions attachment, and attachment conditions becoming. So they say after that you have birth in the future life. So they talk about 3 lifetimes. But it's not necessary, because when they explain like this, in terms of 3 lifetimes, they talk about the rebirth consciousness and the dying consciousness, the last consciousness, and then the relinking consciousness. But then that gives the impression as though consciousness is continuous for your lifetime. Actually, in the Buddha's teachings, consciousness is arising and passing away extremely fast. Nothing is faster than the arising and passing away of consciousness. So in 1 second, you might have, I don't know how many times consciousness arises and passes away, but extremely a great number of times, maybe hundreds of times or thousands of times, even in 1 second. So because it arises and passes away so fast, we think it's continuous. It gives us the impression, for example, you see something, you think it's there all the time, but actually your consciousness sees and then dies away. And then you might hear a sound, and then your seeing consciousness arises and passes away. And then arises again and passes away. So you think you're seeing all the time, but actually it's not. This we don't need to talk about the past life. We don't need to talk about future life. It is enough to see dependent origination in one lifetime. So here, this Mahanidana Sutta, you find they don't talk about ignorance in the past life. They don't talk about creating karma in the past life. So that is already eliminated the past already. So actually, it is because of, if you talk in terms of one lifetime and you use 12 links, it's because of ignorance in this present lifetime that we have sankhara. Ignorance refers to ignorance of the Dhamma, ignorance of suffering, ignorance of impermanence in the world, ignorance of non-self or no-self. So because of ignorance, in ignorance conditions sankhara, which is volition. Volition is the will to live, basically. And in dependent origination, sankhara, there are 3 sankharas under sankhara. Kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, and chitta sankhara. But there is another set of sankhara in the suttas. It's almost similar. It is kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, and mano sankhara. When you have mano sankhara, then it is a creation of karma. There are certain suttas in the 5 Nikayas, you find when they talk about one set of sankharas and when they talk about the other set. So this set concerning dependent origination, the body sankhara, verbal sankhara, and mental sankhara refers independent origination. They always talk about kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, and chitta sankhara. This refers to the will to live. Because of the will to live, because of the will to function, sankhara is basically volition. Because we want to function, we want to exist through the body, through the speech, and through the mind. So we have these 3 sankharas. Because of body sankhara, we want to function or live or exist by body. So we breathe. So kaya sankhara refers to breathing. And then vachi sankhara refers to thinking. Because you must have thought first before you can break into speech. So if you want to speak, first you must think. So that's why vachi sankhara is thinking. And then chitta sankhara is feeling and perception. The mind must start working first. Then only your mind can exist. So it is not like the other one. The other one is mano, is referring to this creation of karma. So because of the will to live, sankhara conditions consciousness. Here we have consciousness. Consciousness refers to the consciousness of a being. And once you have consciousness, then you have the object of consciousness, the counterpart of consciousness, which is nama-rupa, mentality and materiality. And because of these 2, you also have the 6 sense bases, because consciousness must lodge itself in the body with the 6 sense bases. So the 6 sense bases come next. And then because of the six sense bases, you have contact at the six sense bases, bhasa. And then contact at the six sense bases gives rise to feeling. And when you have unpleasant feeling, you think you are suffering. When you have pleasant feeling, you think you are enjoying life. So because we want to enjoy life, we keep chasing after pleasant feeling. So you find in the world, if you can market anything, you can sell anything which gives people pleasant feelings, people will buy, whether it's through the sights or through the sounds or through the smells, taste, touch, people will buy. Even through the mind, like nowadays, people sell computer games. People play computer games just to amuse the mind. So forms means seeing beautiful forms. That's why everybody likes to make up, like to look attractive. And then sounds, like nowadays you have a lot of rock bands. We were just talking this just now with Kevin about Justin Bieber being very popular with the young girls. So if you can make nice sounds, people want, and then smells, people sell perfumes, and then taste, everybody wants to eat good food. And then touch, touch is basically sex and all these things. So because of pleasant feelings, craving arises. The Buddha says this sights, sound, smells, taste, and touch, which gives rise to pleasant feelings. There's always an underlying tendency to crave for it. You want it again and again. Once you experience something that gives you pleasant feeling, then when you don't have it, the memory makes you crave for it. Attach. That is called attachment. So craving gives rise to attachment. And because of attachment, being arises. This being, although he always talks about the sensual desire beings, form beings, and formless beings, it is the concept I am. Once you attach to something, that I arises. For example, a baby, when a baby is born, it does not have much of a notion of the self, but if you give it something like ice cream or chocolate or something, and then he craves for it as a result, and as attached to it, then the self arises. So as we grow older, you find most people in the world, as you gather more and more property, more wealth and all that, the ego becomes bigger and bigger. So that is being, the feeling that I exist, that I am. So this being, once you have the I am, then you realize you have been born into the world. That gives rise to birth. You just know that in this lifetime you had come into being. You were born from your mother's womb, although you don't remember, and yet you know that you were born. And then from birth, you identify yourself with the body, and then there is aging. As the body ages, you think I age. When the body becomes sick, you think I am sick. When the body dies, you think I die. And all the different types of suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, all this. So that is basically the 12 links of dependent origination. Here it does not explain very much. That's why I always say, one sutta, you cannot get much. You have to study many suttas to understand. That's why, to understand dependent origination, you have to study the many suttas in the Nidana chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya. Just as to understand Satipatthana, you don't understand Satipatthana just by reading one Satipatthana sutta. You have to study the many suttas under the Satipatthana chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya. So I think that's all I want to say here for now. You probably have some questions we can discuss.
You said the six senses is cross-breaking. How does one release himself from the six senses? How do you get when you detach yourself from them?
You mean have no six senses? You cannot have no six senses.
But then won't there always be a craving for them? Because one will always feel something, one will always see something.
Yes. So the trick is not to have no six senses, but to be very observant of the feelings that arise, and don't allow the feelings to carry you away. So if you understand that feelings are impermanent, that whatever pleasant feelings you feel, if you attach to it, there's a danger. The danger is that you attach to it, and when it goes away, because in this world everything is impermanent, it is only there for some time. So when it goes away, you're going to suffer. You're going to have a lot of grief. So if you're understanding that, understanding especially the impermanence of the world, then even when you enjoy something, you can enjoy, but not to be over-attached to it. Then you won't suffer. So these 12 links of dependent origination of suffering, we can only break the link at feeling. Only at feeling. You have to understand that feeling is the cause of all suffering.
We read from page 226 that there's a consciousness coming to the mother world. And I'm wondering, how about this conscious? Is there any Nama of this, or it's just a conscious itself? But we heard that it cannot possible, it must have Nama. Then what is the Nama of this consciousness?
This consciousness, in the suttas, in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha called it Gandhabba. And in other later books, they call it intermediate body. It's a temporary body. And in Chinese books, they call it Zhongyin Shen. So there is a body, but it is a temporary body.
Does it belong to any of the five realms?
No, definitely not, because it exists for a very short time, so the Buddha does not classify it. But it's as real as any of the five realms. Sometimes I meet people who study the Abhidhamma, and their way of thinking is the Abhidhamma, and they cannot accept this. They say that is basically they say that it's a soul. It is a soul, but the soul in Buddhism and the soul in other religions like Christianity is different. In Buddhism, any being itself is impermanent. So even the soul also is impermanent. Right? So in the Abhidhamma books, their thinking is that when a being dies, the consciousness stops here. And then the consciousness starts somewhere else. There's nothing that travels from here to there. That's the Abhidhamma concept. But in the suttas, we find the Buddha says that if a being is to be reborn into the womb, then this being enters the womb. It's very different. Also, if a being is to be reborn in hell, in the suttas it says the hell beings come up and drag him down to hell. So what do they drag? He's not yet in hell. They drag that soul. That soul is an intermediate body. It goes down to hell. No? That's why, like in Chinese belief, this Ngao Tao Ma Min, Gu Tao Bear Bin, namely horse face and buffalo head. A lot of people don't believe in things they have not seen. For example, a lot of people don't believe in ghosts. A lot of people don't believe in tree spirits. But I have a supporter who says that a few days before the father passed away, as he was eating dinner, he saw the horse face and buffalo head waiting outside the main door. Let's end here.